Now, I have a Bible of questions, almost a dictionary of questions. So, naturally, I won't be able to answer all the questions, but I'm sure you're kind enough to allow me to choose the questions and answer them. Huh? So, somehow, the first question, I don't know who put it here. I didn't do anything, no shuffling, no magic tricks. The first question here is, what is the link between music and spirituality? Good question. Did you change, Pradeep? No. So, we discussed this day before about music and words and how music could be a bridge between this, what we call concrete, three-dimensional world. Well, it's not, but that's what we think. And the other, which doesn't have any three dimensions, much more than that. That's all I can say at the moment. So I tried to explain to you that this is a bridge between that which is here in this concrete world and that which is beyond. We discussed this matter about how we cannot think without a language and how music is something which needs no language. Well, when you have lyrics tuned to music, which you understand, then the words become more powerful than when they're just spoken, when you're put into music. So poetry is more powerful than prose. What the poet has his own license, he can imagine and he can put it into a poetic form, and then that becomes more important, more appealing. Why? Because there is song. This is also the reason why many great yogis and teachers in India, also elsewhere, have been fond of music and some of them have even written beautiful songs and sung them. Because when you sing, you are out of the ordinary structure of thought. You must see the classical singers, when they are singing or playing an instrument, they are totally lost to the outside world. Now, for instance, the great yogi, I call him Avaduta, a realized person who has broken all boundaries and does what he likes, when he likes. Nobody can put him into a straight jacket. There are many such great teachers, including Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, even Swami Vivekananda in some way. One of them in the south was the great yogi who see, I have dementia. Come on. Sadashiva Brahmin. Sadashiva Brahmendra was a great yogi who stopped talking because his guru criticized him and said, "You're talking too much." So he just shut up. But before that, he wrote so many lyrics, of which one which really appeals to me and which is known in India at least, also in other parts of the world, is a beautiful song called Pibore Ramarasa. It means drink the ecstasy of Rama. And Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to sing and dance also. It is from this that we have movements like ISKCON and so on, who use kirtan. Kirtan is a song which has a certain rhythm and a certain beat. You can't have all. There's only one form of kirtan. So all this music in different forms takes you beyond words into a world and a dimension which is difficult to define. Why do we have love songs? Well, in old Hindi movies, we not only had love songs, the hero and the heroine usually went around trees. Now there aren't many trees left, so go around skyscrapers. Uh, so, music. Now, the sound of music, not the movie, the sound of music has a certain effect when you come down to Tantra on the different chakras, the centers. One of the most important Vedas, there are 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvana Veda. Of these, it looks like the Samaveda, in which are the seeds of all the music systems in India, for instance, is more important than any other Veda. If you read the Samaveda, very few Samavedans are left now, there are very few. If you read the Samaveda, you can't read, you can only sing the Samaveda. Nobody says Samaveda can be read. Usually people say Samagayanti, which means sang the song, Sama. And it's so important because in the Gita, when Krishna declares his glories and says, among the mountains I am Meru, among the immovables I am Himachala, and among the Munis, the Rishis, I am Kapila, and so on. When he comes to the Vedas, he doesn't say, among the Vedas I am the Rig Veda, even though it's the first. He says, among the Vedas I am the Samaveda. Because he himself was an expert at playing the flute in Vrindavan. You know what happened for gopis. So, music has the capacity to attract the mind and take it towards the inner experiences. So, from Samaveda comes all the music that we have, at least in India, and the Swarasthanas, the Saptaswaras, the 7 swaras are connected to the 7 centers. So if you are a musician or a singer or one who plays the tambura or the sitar or whatever, you can tune your centers, the chakras, to the music. In Indian music, well, in Western music, it's also similar, but in the octaves. But in Indian music, we have the Saptaswaras, the 7 swaras, which starts with Sa. Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni, Sa, Sa, Ni, Da, Pa, Ma, Ga, Ri, Sa, down. So, Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni, Sa. I would say Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni, Sa, Ni, Da, Pa, Ma, Ga, Ri, Sa. So, if you take the pure sound of Sa, for instance, and couple it with Brahmari. Now remember, each person's Sa may differ from the others, right? Depending on your voice. If I say Sa, when a lady sings, it cannot be like this. It has its own pitch and tone difference. So whatever it is, your own Sa is connected to your Muladhara. So when you do the Brahmari, for instance, or if you are singing, if you fix your attention on the Muladhara and stay with the Sajja, with the Sa, very soon you will feel something happening out there. Re will be the next. Ga, ma, pa, da, ni. See? So they're all linked. So there is a science called Nada Yoga, which deals basically and only with music and yoga. In the olden days, in the Shivananda Ashram in the Divine Life Society in Rishikesh of Swami Shivananda Saraswati. One of his disciples who was from, I think from the Nepal or some northeast, he had named him Nada Brahmananda. All the time he used to sit in his room with his tampura. And instead of meditating, he always sang, played the tampura. And he could chant Om in different ways, affecting each of your centers. So for this time being, this is all we need to discuss about this matter. We don't want to, there are other questions. So actually it's a beautiful and fascinating subject if you go into it. And in Western music, if you listen to the classical music, well, there are all kinds of music. There's music which makes you jump up and down, and there's music which calms your mind. So when you listen to the classics like Beethoven, Mozart, name a few more, Bach, Wagner, Supari. So what happens is the music grips you. Do you know that Beethoven was himself, was he blind or deaf? He was deaf. And look at this, a deaf man doing music which arrests your attention and takes you, the symphony is like it takes your mind down into the depths to the Muladhara, then lifts you up and brings you to the Hridaya, then takes you up straight to the Sahasrara and back again. So this is the connection between, roughly, in a concise way, between music and spirituality. And it's a very comprehensive subject. It needs to be studied in depth. I have noticed that when we are doing sadhana, which means a spiritual practice, we can have a good experience, but sometimes we go through a dry patch. True. It happens to all of us. I've also gone through the dry patch. It's basically because we are so involved in the abstraction of meditation and outside, beyond the ordinary material world, that sometimes it becomes a little dry. So that was like a symphony. So see what happens when the mind becomes very sensitive because of your sadhana and so on, you hear everything. It's not as if you don't hear everything. But you know how to fix your attention on what you want. You don't go deaf. In fact, your ear and your eye and your skin and your nose, they all function together, not separately. I don't know how to put this. Anyway, so if you take up the practice of sadhana, any sadhana, meaning the practical steps, in the beginning it may be wonderful because the mind has not experienced anything like this before, and then slowly, once it gets accustomed, then you kind of, after a while, feel that, well, it's stopped, it's not moving forward, we're in a dry zone. It happens to everybody. Some people call it the dark night of the soul. Sometimes terrible things happen. And sometimes you go down fast as you went up. But that's where you need a teacher, a person who has gone through it and experienced it to tell you, wait, be patient, watch out, you'll get back there. Don't worry about it. But continue your practice. This is important. It also happens because very often our mind has ascended internally to the upper centers, which is here and here, which is required, of course. What happens in this is that it is getting slightly disconnected from the heart center. When it is disconnected from the heart center, the feelings and emotions run dry. So the human being who is accustomed to feelings and emotions feels dry, left out. I'm not feeling happy about this. If you persist there, then it will come back. But then we want the wine. So this is what happens. And the solution for this is, if any of you doing Kriya sadhana feel that dryness coming upon you, there are two ways to look at it. One is it's part of this movement, so just relax and let it be, and it will come back. The other is shift your attention from these centers to the heart center floor, where you do the Guru Mantra, come back there for some time. Indulge yourself in that. Listen to music. If there's nobody around, get up and dance to music. Do something to keep this movement happy. Or if you have nothing else to do, fall in love. It's dangerous, but then the heart wakes up. Very dangerous, huh? I'm warning you. We have all passed through that. So, this is one way. Now, I want to tell you a little story on this, based on this. Actually happened. How many of you must have heard about the Ramakrishna movement? Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. In the West, people have mostly heard of Swami Vivekananda, who was his disciple. In fact, in England, when Swami Vivekananda was a very erudite and very intelligent and person who had experienced the spiritual and attracted many people, when he was asked in London, can you tell us something about your master? Now his master, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, was totally uneducated, was like a rural man, country guy, and he didn't started his spiritual life worshipping a terrible goddess called Kali, and he had no what in Indian language is called a panditya. He had no understanding or read too many scriptures or nothing. And he produced a disciple like Swami Vivekananda. So when somebody asked him, can you describe, tell us something about your master? Swamiji had to think for a minute what to tell these guys. So he thought carefully and he said, well, I can say this much. He said, a speck of dust from those sacred feet could have created 1,000 Vivekanandas. This is what he said. So, in this movement, after Swami Vivekananda passed away, his disciples succeeded to not a throne, but the head of the order. Because Swami Vivekananda created this order of monks. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was not a monk. But Swami Vivekananda created a society like a monastery, like Belur and the monks and so on, completely dedicated to spiritual practice and social service, both. And one of the heads of the monastery, after Swami Vivekananda passed away, was a Swami called Virajananda. Swami Virajananda was a direct disciple of Swami Vivekananda. After all the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna passed away, then Swami Vivekananda's disciples became the heads of the monastery. So Virajananda became. If you go to the Ramakrishna Mission Central Hall, Belur and look around, there are pictures of all the disciples, all the past presidents. You will find only one president who has a huge beard. The rest are all clean shaven, clean. This man has a long beard, and I think he was a rebel. So Swami Birajananda was a direct disciple who became the head of the monastery. He was a great meditator, and he was initiated personally by Swami Vivekananda himself. So you can imagine. I went around touching all here, Swami Vivekananda touched it here. And Virajananda meditated for long hours. He was considered by everyone to be an illumined, enlightened person. Then he came across this problem. Dryness, no emotions. Everything appeared to him to become very dry. No feelings. This man, this great man. So he was wondering what to do. Now it so happened that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa passed away at a very early age, 50 years. His disciple Vivekananda worked himself to death, building up the whole structure, and passed away at the age of 41. 41. But there was one person very closely associated with Ramakrishna who lived for many years and became quite old and continued to live even after Swamiji's disciples took over the monastery. Very close to Ramakrishna, to Thakur. Yes? His wife, Sharda Devi, lived for many years. And now there was one problem. Even Ramakrishna could read a little bit of Gita and so on, but Sharda Devi was completely from the village and had read nothing. And yet, because of living in close contact with Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, because she was his wife, she imbibed much of his spiritual understanding. By leading a simple life, she used to look after him, feed him, sometimes scold him. And so someone suggested to him, why don't you go and see the Holy Mother, Sharada Devi? Perhaps she could save you from the dryness that you're going through, the dry spot. Maybe she could put some life into your experiences, into your emotions. So another monk said, there's no point, because if you go and ask her, she'll say, look, I don't know anything. I don't understand. And you're a disciple of Vivekananda, of Naren. So what can I do for you? And you're a sannyasi. I'm still a householder. But anyway, she decided, let me go and ask her. So she was living in Italy, in Calcutta, looked after by some young brahmacharis, of whom one, when he became a monk, gave me the mantra of Ramakrishna, was serving her. So he went to her, and she stood up. She said, what are you doing? Please sit down. She said, I know, but you are a sannyasi, you are a monk. So I have to stand up, I'm a householder. With great difficulty, he got her to sit down. And then he said, I want to ask you something, can you help me out? She said, I don't know much, but because I was living with Thakur for so long, maybe I have something. So what's your problem? Sit down. He said, look, this is what has happened. It's become also dry. She put in only one word. She said, oh, you've become completely Vedantic. So he didn't say anything. He kept quiet. And then she said, okay. So you were initiated by Swami Vivekananda. She used to call him Naren, Narendra Datta. Naren, yes. So he told you to meditate here, right? Here and here? He said, yes. Ah, I thought so. What about this? He said, no. She said, okay, do one thing. I don't know if this is going to work, but from now on, for a short while, fix your attention in the heart and think of Thakur, your Guru. Guru meaning ultimate Guru, there in that order. So, fix your attention in the heart and chant the mantra of Ramakrishna. I can't repeat it because they give it, they don't publicize. Chant. He said, okay. So he went off to the Himalayas, stayed quietly in a place called Mayavati, where there is still an ashram. And there he started chanting the mantra in the heart center. Slowly, slowly, slowly. One day, deep meditation, he burst out crying. And his whole emotions came back. And he was back to normal. And then he could go deeper into it. It was no more, the dryness did not act as a conditioning factor anymore. So, if you're passing through a dry period, it's okay. For some time, alcohol is prohibited. Get back to it. Not that in the bottle. Two kinds of spirit. One is the inner spirit, and other is the spirit sold in bottles. We are talking about the inner spirit. Both work similarly sometimes. Who gave the pen for them to write? um, I can read parts, but somebody's. Anyhow, thank you for calling me so dearly as dear Satyam. You mentioned the hum saw. You mentioned the hum saw or hum saw. Can it be, can't read, after the Kriya meditation? I'm getting the idea. And can Vastrika, Pranayam, you practice if you have a medical condition? Oh, got it, two questions. Let me answer the first question. Can we practice the Bhastrika, the quick breathing, or you can call it hyperventilation, if you have a medical condition? Good question. If you have a heart problem, then go slowly. Don't do it in a very aggressive manner. Do it softly. And don't hold your breath for too long. Hold it for a little while and let it go. Don't hold it for too long. If you have a heart condition, or if you suffer from high blood pressure, both. And if you also suffer from high blood pressure, if you are practicing yogasanas, don't do as much as possible postures where your head is down for too long. You could have a hemorrhage. So. The second question, Hamsa, can it be practiced? I have to tell you this. Let me explain the Hamsa first. Hamsa basically means when you breathe inhale, you chant hum in your mind. And when you exhale, you chant saw in your mind. Or imagine that the breath sounds like hum and saw. Now, you don't have to go very hard, you have to be as gentle as possible. See, I'm not, it's almost effortless. Now in Hamsa, you don't need to hold your breath at all. Just take it. Of course, for a short period, automatically it's held and then exhaled. So, this Hamsa can be done at any time, in any place, even if you have had food, if you had a meal. While traveling, while walking, while sitting, preferably sitting down, of course, you can practice Hamsa, no harm. I think it's also nice to, this is a new innovation, um, Nobel Prize, um, uh, uh, record the chanting of hum and saw, either yourself or someone who has a sweet voice or someone who has a soothing voice, not no, not someone saying like a roar, but hum saw very softly, nice, comfortably. Record that and play it with your headphones and attune your breathing to that. I taught it to a couple of people and they said it is very good, so try it, might work. And the advantage is, when when we are traveling, you're on a flight, you can put it on. If the stewardess says food, sir. Yeah, I think. This one is clear. I think it is written by a lady. Dear Guruji, can women go through menopause? Going through a little bit of a spelling mistake. Of course, everybody has to go. Can women going through menopause benefit from Kriya Yoga? Are there any harmful effects of Kriya on hormone levels? No. There are no harmful effects of Kriya on the hormone levels. In fact, maybe it's a good thing to do. It might balance your hormones. Why? Because, you see, basically what happens in the body, even physical disease, is because of the imbalance between the Ida and the Pingala, the left and the right. So when you do Kriya Pranaya, the Ida and the Pingala become balanced. So there's a better chance of having good things rather than anything negative. One. Second, is there a benefit for women passing through menopause by doing Kriya? I would say yes, because in menopause, because of the hormonal differences and imbalances, sometimes the mind gets into depression and various things. It may be temporary, but it can happen. And Kriya can sort out this imbalance, especially hum jaw, and put it on a proper footing. So it's a good thing. Why do some literature on the chakra colors say it is like the rainbow, yum, red, wam, orange, rum, yellow, yam, green, hum, blue, om, indigo, and all. The standard textbook on the chakras from the Indian tradition is the Satchakra Nirupana and the Yoga Pradipika. If you have the patience to read the Siddha Siddhanta Paddhati of Gorakhanatha. Among these, I would prefer the Shat Chakra Nirupana. Now, traditionally in the Shat Chakra Nirupana, the colors described are as it's gone. Okay. As I explained to you. Why? Because the lowest center is represented by a tattva. Tattva meaning a principle called the Prithvi Tattva. And the Prithvi, the color of Prithvi is golden yellow. The earth is represented by the Prithvi. Earth is also called Prithvi. So that's why, but when you meditate on the Bindu, you put a little red triangle in because it is a symbol of the feminine energy, red. So therefore, don't wave the red flag before the bull. So the red triangle. Otherwise, the color of Prithvi is golden yellow. I'm telling you what the Shat Chakra Nirupana says. Don't worry about the number of petals in the Shat Chakra Nirupana, which is also called serpent power in its English translation. The number of petals and everything, don't worry too much about it. Color is Prithvi, which is golden yellow. And the next one, Swadhisthana, like a crescent, is the color of the moon. And the next one is the Agni, the fire. So it is Aruna Prabham, color of Agni, of Aruna. And the next one represents Vayu, which is the color of the sky, the sky blue. And Vishuddhi is the indigo color, deep purple color. And here is pure white, and this is multicolored. So, if you consider only the Sahasrara Chakra, then you can say it's like the rainbow, because it has multicolors. But the rest, traditionally, these are the colors that have been mentioned. If there is any group who is practicing it, like using Vibgyor, then also it is different, because then it should be violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and red. There must be some reason, I don't know. But this is what usually is. And I'm sure you're not talking about the rainbow body. Rainbow body. There have been some other great yogis in Tibet who have, when they passed away, had what we call the rainbow body. This is good. Good news. When I meditate, I get visuals of small violet lights, which then this grows bigger and spreads. This lasts for a relatively longer. Lasts for relatively longer. Is there a significance to it? I'm unable to concentrate on it. Yeah. When you meditate, especially in the ajna, yeah, and if you see violet lights, maybe one, maybe many, please, those who don't see, don't worry, it's okay. And if you see it grow and expand and go back, and the moment you try to catch it, it's not there. It's a good sign. So what would you do? Don't try to catch it. Practically. Don't try to hold it. Don't set it free. And if it comes and goes, enjoy it. It's usually beautiful blue, purple light. That's a good sign that your attention is becoming subtler and subtler.
If we see some different light, like crimson or red or orange, then what is
That's also a good thing. Don't try to say that today I saw orange, therefore tomorrow also I want to see orange. Leave it. Let it happen by itself and enjoy it when it happens. Even if you see something dark, don't get worried. Dark color has its own beauty. It's from the dark that the light comes out. Hmm? What is the meaning of the word Krishna in Sanskrit? Dark. Am I dark? So, dark is good. Kali is black. Black. The black hole is dark, into which we all go and come back at some point. So, it's not a bad thing. Now, yeah, so if you smell a fragrance, couple of safeguards, check if somebody has lit an agarbatti in the name. No, I'm just saying. Or mom or somebody is wearing attar. If you have eliminated all this completely and you still have this fragrance, which means the mind is becoming subtler. And subtler is able to smell the subtle scents that are in the air but are normally not felt. But you have to eliminate the other. Now, here is a question which I do not want to discuss in public because people have their own belief systems. I don't want to get involved with this. It's about some very well known godman or a godman who's been accused of taking advantage of his followers sexually and so on. So I don't want to mention, it's written here, but I just don't want. Yeah, so one has to be careful. And I personally do not think that a person who has reached a high spiritual height can ever stoop down to such acts. I personally don't think so. But we won't discuss it. It leaves a very bad taste in the mouth, so let's leave it there. In fact, it kind of questions the whole belief systems of people. They believe somebody is God and then God is indulging. Leave it there. So the next question is connected to that. How to bring Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram in our lives. Now, actually the words mean, Satyam means the truth. Why is it Satyam called the truth? Because it's nothing to do with a personality or a God-man. Satyam means the truth. Satyameva jayate. Truth alone triumphs. The Theosophical Society motto is Satyat nasti paro dharma. There is no dharma greater than truth, Satya. So that is Satyam, which means the reality. So you say now this is reality. I say no, this is what appears to be reality, but the reality is different from this. Because if it is real, it should be permanent. This is not permanent. I am here today and gone tomorrow, so I cannot be Satya. The Satya is that which is always there, and it's a description. The word is used to describe the supreme reality, the Brahman, which is Satya. That is why Satya and Sat are the same. Which is why the Vedic hymn says, Asato ma sadgamaya. Take me from that which is unreal to that which is real. That real is Satya. Why is it called Shivam? Because that truth is auspicious in nature and blissful in nature. Shivam is a substitute word for Ananda in the Sanskrit dictionary, which means bliss. So that truth has to be also enjoyable, blissful. Satchit Ananda, of the nature of reality, consciousness and bliss. Then Sundaram, but it has to be beautiful. When you say beautiful, it's not physical beauty that we are talking about, but the sublime beauty of the divine, not physical. Physical beauty doesn't last long. It comes and it goes. When you grow old, it becomes wrinkled. How long can your hair stay black? So what happens? Then you start dyeing it. So where is the beauty in that? Please, if you want to dye your hair, do it. I'm not talking about that. I don't, because I decided once it's better to die than to die. So that at least you're original. Um, so Sundaram means Saundari Lahari, the beauty of ecstasy. So therefore, all deities are shown as beautiful. So this is the meaning. And all you should remember that it has nothing to do with any personality of this earth. This is a pretty complicated question, which I don't think we can deal with here in this little time. Where we go? Are there any other lokas, worlds that we go to? What is the end of this cycle? Now this is something that requires many satsangs to go into. However, let me tell you something. Let's not worry about the lokas now. Let's worry about this loka. And if you learn how to be free of this loka while still living here, then you will be able to tell about other lokas without asking me. What if I tell you that there is another loka? It's my word, right? How do you know it's true? So, it could be true. I'm not in the habit of lying, but it could still be my idea of the world, the other world. So my suggestion is, try to deal with this loka now. And if you deal with this, then you will be able to understand the other. This is a question I'd like to do. We have some more. I'm reminded of when you gave me this chit. At one time there was a so-called religious person who was also involved in politics in some way. And people used to be really scared of him because he used to sit here and he belonged to a militant outfit in India, and he had two pots on either side. So people used to bring him the names of people who were here, rolled up in paper. He would open the paper and everybody is watching which pot he is going to put it. If you put it in the right pot, the guy is safe. If you put it in the left pot, he would be killed the next day. So, two sides I also have. Don't worry. You have a harmless man here. Dear Guruji, what is the difference between Om, which means O-M, and Aum, A-U-M? When we meditate, we say Aum. When we say mantras, we say Om, like Om Namah Shivaya, very question. Now, the sound Om, whether you say Om or Om, is non-denominational. It doesn't belong to a religion or it's a pure sound. It is the nearest sound you can get to the purity of the tattvas, the principles. So even without knowing what Om means, the sound of Om is a link, is a bridge between the ordinary mind and that which is beyond. And the way of chanting it is to fix your attention totally on it and chant it as if It's coming forth from your heart or from your forehead. Om. This is the instruction that the great Lord of Death Yama gives to Nachiketas in the Kathopanishad. After describing everything, he says, there is a link that takes you to the inner being which is free of death forever. And that inner being is also the all-pervading Supreme Brahman. And that is Om. So the chanting of Om is a wonderful exercise, is a wonderful sadhana. Some people only do that, it's called Om sadhana. Great. Now, to the question whether there is a difference between A, U, Ma, Om or Om, yes, philosophically and metaphysically, Om is divided into three syllables. A, U and Im, Ma. Here, when you say Om, it's This is because metaphysically and philosophically, A represents the beginning of creation, beginning of everything. Even a person who can't speak can say Ah. Ah. That's our first response. You hit somebody, hits you, Ah. Also there's another response. If somebody says, will you do it? That's also Om. So Om is an assertion. Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you say, So anyway, so A represents the beginning of creation, the beginning of sound. Ah. In fact, since it's the beginning, and since the real beginning has no end, not ordinary beginnings, has no end, therefore the word used for alphabet in Sanskrit, which is an ancient language, you don't have to connect it with any denomination. The sound, the name of alphabet is akshara. When you say alphabet, why do you say alphabet? Because there is alpha, beta and so on. But in Sanskrit it is akshara. Akshara, chara means that which can be destroyed. When you add a in front, according to Sanskrit grammar, then it becomes indestructible. Akshara. So, a represents the indestructible primeval sound, the word. We read somewhere, the beginning was word, the word was with God, and the word was God. Now if I give you the Rig Veda, Prajapati vai idam agriyasi, the beginning was Prajapati, the Brahman, tasya vak dividyasi, that Prajapati was sound, word, vak vai parabrahmam, that sound is no different from the Supreme Brahman. So this is the beginning, the akshara, the indestructible, Now, if anything is created, it needs to be sustained. So, U represents sustaining of the which began. So it becomes U. So in the Hindu system of divinities for every purpose, the Hindu mind is a very elaborate, imaginative mind. So the first creator is Brahma, the four-headed, and then why four-headed? Four directions. And the Vishnu is the sustainer, U. And when you say Om, Ma, the last word, you have closed everything. If you need to start a new Manvantara, a new period of creation, then it has to open again, otherwise it's closed. So this is considered to be destruction. Not really destruction, transformation. The old goes and the new comes. If there is always new, where is the place for old? Then where is the place for the new? So the old has to move, so new has to come. So this samhara, the finishing off. Samhara doesn't exactly mean distraction, it means transformation. So A, U and Im, therefore, Ma represent the beginning, the middle and the end of life, of thought, of everything. So it's a very lofty concept. Apart from that the sound has a certain brings about a certain change in your psyche. That's one side of the story. This is the other side. Now, um, according to the Mandukya Upanishad, represents the waking state. We discussed this. The state where we are hopefully now in waking state. And U represents the dream state, Swapnavastha. And Om, the Ma represents deep sleep, Sushupti, Jagriti, Tejasa, and Sushupti. Swapna is also called Tejasa because, in the dream your eyes are closed, there are no lights, but you see everything as if it's daylight, so it's self-illuminating. Therefore, the Swapna Avastha, the state of dream, is also called Tejasa, self-lit. And then Sushupti, deep sleep, which we are very fond of. It's okay. These three are represented by Om. Now what happens when you chant, say Om? Om. You don't say Om. Well, some do. Once I went to an ashram, the people never call each other their names. They addressed everybody as Om. Depending on their mood, if they were in good, hello Om, I was angry, Om, come here. So that. So, Om can change. So anyway, so why did I say that? When I say Om, it doesn't end abruptly there. It says Om. Right? So when you write Om in Sanskrit, you write this way, and then you put a crescent mark on top, and on the top there is a dot. Now this dot is called the Ardha Matra, which means half time. Which means you ring a bell, it's not over, right? It goes on and on. In fact, it doesn't go off at all, but after a certain frequency you cannot hear it. The ear is built for a certain frequency. Beyond that it can't hear, but it's still going on. Nothing, no sound made on earth ever finishes. So, this is Ardhaman. So this is the Ma, the Om. And that represents the state beyond waking, dream and deep sleep. The witness of all the three states, but not involved in any of this, which is your true essence, which is Purna. Purnamada, Purnamidam. This is Om. Okay. Now somebody also, the questioner said, Om, O-M, yes. When you say the mantra Om Namah Shivaya, for instance, you don't say Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. So why is it so? Om Namo Narayana, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om. So it looks like you add a big O and an M to it, Om. This is because for the purpose of chanting, when it is included in a mantra, it becomes the pranava, the life-giving force for the mantra. And all you need is the first part, O, and the Ma. You don't have to go Om like that. I see somebody chanting Om like that sometimes. For a long time it's going on saying and I'm wondering if it's going to end. So modify it at some point. It's Om. Now, for affecting your own system in meditation, for concentrating on your chakras, the other Om with OM is better than the O. The other Om is good to affect the entire community. Suppose I'm sitting here and you're all chanting, it affects everybody. But when you meditate and you're doing your Ishta mantra, Om Namo Narayana, short Om is sufficient because the most important sound in that Om is the Ma. Why? It immediately soothes your centers, the Ma sound, sound. You go to a place, a hospital, where sick people are convalescing. The most common sound you hear is hmm, hmm. It's built in, it suits the entire system. That's why in most languages the word mother starts with a ma, mother, mata. So, so when you chant it in meditation, it's good when you do Om Namah Shivaya. This Om is the best. And give a lot of stress on the last syllable, Ma. Om Namah Shivaya. When you do Brahmari, what you're doing is picking up the last syllable and chanting only that. Why? Because then it affects your inner centers. What do you do in Brahmari? Anything more said about Om is not allowed. Meditation, question mark. Thank you, Sunil. Nothing else. Oh, see. Sunil's question is, if I am at a place like Ramanashram, if I have already done my morning Kriya, is it okay to do short Kriya in public? Example, Guru Mantra, Kriya Pranayam, Chakradharana, meditation. Oh, thank you, that's how it is. Now let me tell you something. When you go to Ramanashrama, you're going to a place where there was a sage who touched the infinite. The Kriya and everything you do is to touch that, whatever you do. Here was a sage who realized when he was practically very young that he is not this body or the mind, but that supreme being. Which of course is the essence of the Vedantic teachings. Therefore, when you go to a place like that, when the mindset of most people who come there is this way, then you actually don't have to do Kriya. Just sit quietly and let it soak in. Think of Ramana if you like. Or if you want to practice Kriya, sit in a quiet place so that you don't disturb others and practice your Kriya. You can practice it in the morning, but evening, any time, but don't make it a public demonstration. So that will kind of interfere with many things. So sit in your room and do it, or go up to Skandashrama. If nobody is there, sit down there and do it. It's okay. Maharshi himself said, it's not so easy to figure out who am I and so on. He said, if you can't do it, watch your breath. So it's okay. But try not to do it in public and interfere with the rest of the system. It's like going to Mayapur, which is the headquarters of the Gaudiya Math, founded by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and while everybody is singing and dancing, we are doing Kriya. Doesn't work that. You know what I mean? You can do your Kriya, of course, but do it in private. 5 बज गए. Here is a question which I wouldn't have normally taken up, but would you please explain what are the different dimensions and planes that exist in the same world that we live in? I am going to counter you with a question. Do you think in this hall there are only this many people sitting? Silly question, huh? You don't see, you don't feel, you don't know, but there are many beings. Huh? So, not only in this plane, suppose you can imagine, at the moment, imagine that there are beings whose structure is so rare that it can fit in to the space between the atoms and molecules of our system. Then do they need another space to occupy? They can occupy the same space. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a logical thing. The fact remains that we have many planes of existence, and when you say planes, they don't mean that it is somewhere above the earth. Could be there too, but there can also be different planes here depending on the vibratory mode of the quantum particles of that plane. It can interpenetrate. Uh, when you practice, when your mind becomes sensitive, you can sometimes feel this, especially if you spend time meditating on the Manipura chakra. It's one of the things mentioned in the Vibhuti section of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And then slowly, like a tiny telescope opens up. So there are beings who are interested in the subject here. You don't see them. Don't get frightened. They're not harmful. So, I mean, I don't want to say anything more than that on this. I'm taking this question with me. Huh? I'm taking these questions. I will read the questions and I will try and answer them to the best of my capacity in my mind. And hopefully, you will understand the answers. Hopefully. So, what you do is, from now on, when you sit down to meditate or to your Kriya, the last part, if you have given me questions which I have not read and answered, think in your mind, I've given you this question, and then meditate. Don't forget about it. Then that day or the next day may not be when you're meditating while you're in the office or you're cooking. Suddenly, if something comes up, let me know. Acid test is through experience, right? Right. Om Shanti Shanti. I hope you don't mind me wearing a jeans.
Very nice. Very nice.